Having privilege doesn't mean that your life was easy. It just means that who you are didn't make it harder. I worked hard for all that I have. I earned everything and I deserve it all. I'm sure you've heard both of these. Today I'm here to tell you why both of them are wrong. Okay, let's start with the easy one. The notion that somebody deserves all that they have because they worked really hard for that, right? Like, let's say that you think in such a manner, right? Now take a moment to appreciate the fact that you have a home, right, from which you're watching this video, right? I mean, chances are if you're watching this video, you probably do have a home, and that you were born into a world in which you had a home in which to grow up in, right? Now, let's say you've worked immensely in your life, right? And that got you to certain positions, and that got you certain opportunities which you used, and that got you certain achievements which you think you truly deserve. Fair enough. Now take a moment to consider the fact that there are people who do not have a home, right? People who are born into a world in which they are homeless, right? They do not have a home to grow up in. Now if that person, right, worked just as hard as you, right, they would not get as far as you, right? Because they have the additional worry of having to worry about a place to stay, right? So even though the two of you have worked to the same extent, right, the level of success that you enjoy will not be the level of success that they will enjoy, right? It's not by any genius of your own, right, that you were born into a world having a home, and that person was born into a world but not having a home, right? So this advantage that you have, right, also, while it's easy to forget it sometimes, it's there. Okay, so in this case I use the example of having a home and not having a home. But then there are obviously other ways in which you could have had benefits which you didn't earn by any genius of your own, which gave you certain kinds of advantages over other people, right? So you cannot claim credit for that. And the fact remains that even if you've worked really hard, if you've had success, right, that means that you were at a certain starting position from which it was possible to have that success, from which it was easier to have that success compared to some other position, right? So while it is sometimes easy to forget these advantages that we have, it's not accurate, and it's to hold the belief that you deserve everything you have because of your own hard work. No, right? That comes from the fact that you're in a starting position from which it was possible. Okay, let's address the more, let's say, complicated one, right? The notion that having privilege doesn't mean that your life wasn't hard. It just means that who you are didn't make it harder. I'm not making this stuff up. This is actually a direct quote from an Instagram post, really popular Instagram post, with over 140,000 likes at the time of recording, right? So here's the thing. Everything in your life is a consequence of who you are, no matter who you are. Consider this for a moment. If someone has had an incredibly difficult life, right, which makes their life, let's say, more difficult than average, that simply means that they have had less privilege than the average person. Now, if you're going up to such a person and you're saying, no, you have white, cisgendered, heterosexual male privilege, that simply means that you're recognizing the aspects in which they are supposedly privileged, but you've completely failed to recognize those aspects in which they are not privileged, right? Those aspects of that person made their life more difficult than the average person, right? That is who they are, and that part of who they are did indeed make their life more difficult than that of the average person. You're simply failing to recognize those aspects of who they are, right? And that's just an error in reasoning. Why should only those aspects count in which they are privileged and not the ones in which they are underprivileged? Like, maybe this person was an orphan. Maybe they didn't have any money while growing up. Maybe they suffered from physical assault a lot when growing up. These are also part of who they are. And these parts of who they are, right, did indeed make their life more difficult, right? So to go up to them and to point out the aspects in which they are privileged, right, and say that who you are didn't make your life harder, is just absurd. You're just not seeing the parts of who they are that made it harder for them, right? Now you could argue that, let's say, a brown, transgendered, bisexual female would have it harder than this person. And perhaps you'd be right. But that wouldn't make your initial case, which was that who they are didn't make it harder. Okay, so about that first notion about deserving everything that you have because of your hard work, I kind of understand why people believe that, right? But the second one, the notion that having privilege is not a matter of how hard your life was, it's just a matter of who you are to make it harder, that just seems like an intangible belief to hold. Like, once you recognize that there is privilege and there is a lack of privilege, it's just absurd that someone would even argue that, if someone's life has been hard, it hasn't been because of who they are. Of course it has been because of who they are. It's just because of aspects of who they are that are not discussed in the mainstream, I suppose. I'd like to go a bit further here. Take the example of a really successful person. Let's say Lionel Messi, right? The man is incredibly successful, right? He is considered one of the best football players of all times. He has made a lot of money out of that, and he probably worked really, really hard for it, right? He would come in early mornings and leave late whenever the training session ends. Like, he must have worked really hard for it. But I'd like you to take a moment to consider the following. The fact that Lionel Messi lives in a society and at a point in history in which everyone around him appreciates footballers and are willing to pay loads and loads of money to footballers is by no genius of his own, right? The fact, like, if he were born, let's say 700 years ago, this exact same person, he would not have been very successful on these traits, right? The fact that he lives in such a society in which his skills are valued is by no genius of his own. He didn't choose in what kind of a world he'd be born into. And same goes for everybody else. Like, if you've been very successful because of certain skill sets that you have, well, those skills might not have been useful at some other point in history. And the fact that you have them now, right, and that they're valued now, is by no genius of your own. Okay. Let's say let's say your skill is working really, really hard, right? That's your specialty. Surely you deserve credit for that, don't you? Well, not quite. Like, the fact that you have this capacity, right, to work really, really hard is not something that you have by some genius of your own. Perhaps it's genetic, perhaps it's environmental, but whatever it may be, right, there was no one who decided for themselves, I don't want the capability of being able to work really hard. And you didn't get that trait by some genius of your own, right? So you can't claim credit for that either, right? So that's it about privilege. And in conclusion, both of those statements, which I introduced at the very beginning of this video, are wrong. So that's been it for this video. I've been Aditya Prakash, or Soytheist. Let me know what you think of this whole video, right? Let me know if you held on to one of the positions that I discussed in this video. Let me know if you hold on to the position that I hold on to. Let me know if I've changed your mind. Let me know if you think I'm wrong. We can have some wonderful discussions there. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you really love the video. Thank you kindly for the view, and an extra special thank you to my wonderful patrons on patreon.com who support my work. If you'd like to do that too, you can do so by clicking the first link in the description. That's patreon.com/Soytheist. You can also follow me on social media here, and I'll see you in the next one.